A snapping shrimp closes its claw. The motion takes less than 600 microseconds. In that instant, a cavitation bubble forms. When it collapses, the water temperature inside reaches 4,700 degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of the sun. This was first recorded by Thomas Say in 1818. He called it Alpheus heterocalis. He did not understand what he had seen. He wrote down the snap. He did not know it was a weapon surpassing human manufacturing limits. And here is the part textbooks ignore. This shrimp has a brain smaller than a grain of rice. Its nervous system is barely a thread. Yet it produces conditions that melt steel. The first loop opens. There is a creature that violates every assumption biology makes about complexity and power, and it is not alone. In the year 200 before the Common Era, a Chinese medical text called the Shen Nong Ben Chao Jing recorded an observation. It listed shrimp as a detoxifying agent for heat phlegm disorders. They knew something about this animal's hardiness 2,000 years ago. They did not know how far that hardiness extended. Consider the mantis shrimp. Its fossil record goes back 419 million years. That is 150 million years before the first land vertebrates. The earliest known species was described from the Rhynie chert in Scotland. Hegna and Hegna published the evidence in 2010. The creature's strike mechanism was already in place, a weapon system that evolved while the continents were still empty. Most people imagine evolution as a ladder. Complexity increases. Intelligence accumulates. Larger brains defeat smaller ones. The shrimp refuses to cooperate with this narrative. In 2004, S.N. Patek published a paper in Nature. She measured the mantis shrimp's strike. It reaches 23 meters per second. The acceleration is 10,000 times the force of gravity. The strike generates a bubble that collapses with a shockwave. The temperature spike is instantaneous. The shrimp does not think about this. It does not plan. It simply fires. If you have ever watched a nature documentary and felt the explanation was too neat, you know the frustration. The narrator says evolution produces elegant solutions. The shrimp produces a weapon that engineers have not matched. None of this is elegant. It is overkill beyond reason. But here is where the gap widens between textbook and reality. In 1935, the San Diego Marine Biological Association harvested brine shrimp cysts for the first time commercially, Artemia franciscana. They did not know they had stumbled on a secret that would reshape aquaculture and evolutionary biology. These cysts can remain dormant for decades. They can survive complete desiccation. They can be stored in a jar for years, then dropped into salt water and hatch within hours. The cysts can withstand temperatures from near absolute zero to just below boiling. They can survive vacuum. They can survive radiation doses that would sterilize a human 1,000 times over. And their nervous system is a ring of cells, nothing more. The shrimp paradox was named by marine ecologist J.E.S. Hughes in 1999. He published in Marine Ecology Progress series. The paradox is simple. Low trophic level crustaceans with simple nervous systems dominate global biomass. They outmass fish. They outmass whales. They outmass everything that moves through the water column. And they do it without intelligence, without planning, without any of the traits biology textbooks claim drive evolutionary success. The second loop opens. That paradox, dominance without intelligence, is not an exception. It is a pattern nature repeats across scales, and each time it surfaces, a textbook assumption fractures. Subscribe to stay ahead of the next fracture. The organisms we pull forward will keep dismantling what biology promised was settled. Drop the word cryptobiosis in the comments if you want to mark yourself among the ones who see the hidden strategies behind the simple forms. There is a word for survival without complexity. It is cryptobiosis, hidden life. The brine shrimp practices it. The tardigrade practices it. Nematodes practice it. All of them are small. All of them have tiny nervous systems. All of them can survive conditions that would kill a mammal within seconds. In 1859, Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species. On page 317, he described Caridina losing a chela, a claw. He watched it regrow. He did not know the mechanism. He recorded the observation. The scientific establishment accepted the limb could regenerate. They did not ask if the same principle applied to the whole organism. Regeneration is the trait that should not exist. When a shrimp loses a claw, it does not heal the wound. It grows a new claw. The cells at the amputation site dedifferentiate. They return to an embryonic state. Then they rebuild. The new claw is identical. The nerve connections reform. The shrimp does not need to learn to use it. It is ready. This process is controlled by the same simple nervous system. A few dozen neurons coordinate the regrowth of an entire limb. Engineers cannot replicate this. No robot regrows its own actuator. The shrimp does it while swimming. By 2022, the world shrimp production reached 13.5 million metric tons, a 4% increase since 2020. The Pacific white shrimp drives most of the growth. Litopenaeus vanna, the species that adapted to industrial farming because it could survive conditions that killed everything else. The species with the simple nervous system. The species that outcompetes complex organisms across every metric except intelligence. Now consider this. The snapping shrimp produces a cavitation bubble that collapses at 23 meters per second. The bubble emits a flash of light, sonoluminescence, light from sound, a mechanical action that briefly achieves nuclear fusion conditions. A crustacean with a thread of neural tissue produces plasma. The textbooks say complex nervous systems evolved because predation pressure demanded faster reaction times. The mantis shrimp's strike is too fast for its own eyes to track. It aims before it fires. It does not correct mid-strike. It does not need to. When Patek measured the strike in a laboratory, she had to use high-speed cameras. The shrimp was too fast for human vision. The acceleration was measured at 10,000 times gravity. The force was enough to break aquarium glass. The shrimp did not seem to notice. The paradox deepens. Remember the brine shrimp cyst, Artemia franciscana. Commercial harvest began in 1935. The industry grew to billions of dollars. The cysts hatched into larvae that fed farmed fish. The process was reliable because the animal was durable beyond reason. The animal with a ring of cells for a brain. If you have ever felt that evolutionary biology tells a story that is too clean, you have already sensed the gap. The narrative says brains got bigger because problems got harder. The shrimp solves harder problems than most mammals. It does not use a brain to do it. It uses reflexes compressed into a single neuron chain. There is a word for this in robotics. Feed-forward control. The system calculates the output before the input arrives. The shrimp predicts the trajectory of its prey. It fires before the prey moves. It does not react. It anticipates. Engineers spend years teaching robots to do this. The mantis shrimp has been doing it for 419 million years. The fossil from the Rhynie chert is compound in nature. Multiple eyes preserved in silica. The visual system of the mantis shrimp has 12 to 16 photoreceptor types. Humans have 3. The shrimp can see polarized light. It can see ultraviolet. It can see infrared. It can see colors that do not have names in any human language. And it processes this visual data with a brain the size of a poppy seed. The third loop closes. The fourth opens. In 2010, Hegna and Hegna published the description of Paleostomatopoda. They confirmed the mantis shrimp's lineage was ancient. The visual system was already sophisticated when fish had not yet evolved jaws. The predator with the world's fastest strike was hunting in a world of slow-moving targets. The paradox is not that shrimp are simple. The paradox is that simplicity outcompetes complexity across the majority of evolutionary time. The Shen Nong Ben Cao Jing listed shrimp as a remedy. The text was compiled around 200 before the Common Era. They had noticed something. The animal was robust. It could survive treatments that killed other creatures. They did not ask why. 419 million years of feed-forward evolution, and the mantis shrimp still outperforms our finest robotics, not despite its simplicity, but because of it. If you want to stay ahead of the next paradigm-shattering revelation biology is hiding, subscribe and join the minority who refuse to let textbooks define the limits of nature. Drop "feed forward" in the comments if you see the pattern now. The ancient outliers hold the keys to the rules we haven't even written yet. The why is cryptobiosis. The brine shrimp suspends its metabolism. It stops aging. It stops its internal clock. It enters a state where time does not pass. In that state, it can survive the vacuum of space. It can survive the radiation belts. It can survive dehydration that would crystallize every cell in a complex organism. The cysts are sold by the kilogram. 30 million metric tons of shrimp are born from cysts every year. The animal that stopped its own aging to reproduce the next generation. The animal with a nervous system so simple it barely registers as a nervous system. The fifth loop opens. Darwin watched Caridina regrow a claw in 1859. He recorded it in The Origin of Species. He moved on. He did not explore the mechanism. The scientific establishment assumed regeneration was a local phenomenon. Cells at the wound site proliferate. The shape reforms. The problem is solved. They were wrong. The regeneration is coordinated by the nervous system. Sever the nerve. The claw does not regrow. The shrimp needs its thread of neurons to tell the cells where to rebuild. The same simple nervous system that cannot plan a hunting strategy can orchestrate the reconstruction of an entire limb. The limb contains muscles, tendons, exoskeleton, sensory hairs, blood vessels, all of it controlled by a few dozen neurons distributed through the stump. The signals travel at the speed of crustacean nerve conduction. Milliseconds between command and growth factor release. The cells respond. The complexity is not in the brain. It is in the body. The body itself has been programmed to rebuild. The nervous system is the trigger. The intelligence has been distributed. The shrimp does not think about regeneration. It simply does it. The same principle applies to the mantis shrimp strike. The nervous system does not compute the trajectory. It is hardwired. The pattern is fixed. The shrimp has been refining this pattern for 419 million years. It does not learn. It executes. There are applications for this in human technology. Engineers at Harvard have been studying the snapping shrimp's claw for a decade. They want to replicate the cavitation bubble. They want to create microscale cutting tools that do not require blades. The shrimp has already optimized this tool. It does it with a muscle and a hinge. No microchips, no sensors, no feedback loop. The paradox is that the most efficient weapon system in the ocean evolved in an animal that cannot learn from its mistakes. In 1999, Hughes published The Shrimp Paradox. He argued that the bias toward complex nervous systems in evolutionary theory was a sampling artifact. Biologists studied complex animals because they were easy to see. The shrimp was invisible because it was small. The biomass was invisible because it was spread across the entire ocean. Hughes calculated that low trophic level crustaceans accounted for more living material than any other animal group, more than krill, more than copepods, more than fish, more than mammals. The winner of the evolutionary biomass contest was the animal with the simplest brain. The conclusions of this study were not widely taught. They contradicted the narrative. The narrative says complexity wins. The data says simplicity dominates. The sixth loop opens. This is where the paradigm fractures. The brine shrimp cyst does not just survive, it can remain viable for decades. In 2022, researchers hatched cysts that had been stored for 30 years. The hatch rate was over 90%. The animals were identical to the generation that had dried out in 1992. No evolution had occurred. No adaptation. The animal had simply paused. This is not evolution. This is stasis. The shrimp had perfected survival by refusing to change. It found a state outside time. It stopped aging. It stopped evolving. It found the loophole. Darwinian theory assumes that organisms that stop evolving go extinct. The environment changes. The predator evolves. The prey evolves. The static organism loses. The shrimp disproves this by ignoring it. The environment changed. The brine shrimp did not. The predator evolved. The shrimp remained in a desiccated cyst until the predator starved. The simplest nervous system in the ocean executed the most complex survival strategy. It waited. The mantis shrimp fossil from the Devonian period confirms this. The visual system in the fossil is almost identical to the visual system in a living mantis shrimp. 419 million years of stasis. The strike mechanism did not improve. It did not need to. By the year 2022, the global shrimp production hit 13.5 million metric tons. The industry depends on the brine shrimp cyst. The hatcheries of the world buy Artemia franciscana cysts by the ton. The cysts are harvested from the Great Salt Lake. They are dried. They are packaged. They are shipped. They are stored in warehouses for years. Then they are dropped into salt water, and the animal returns to life. The logistic chain of the entire aquaculture industry depends on the ability of a crustacean with a ring of neurons to suspend its own metabolism. The seventh loop opens. This is where it becomes personal. If you have ever felt that the official explanation of evolution does not match what you see in nature, you have already identified the gap. The textbooks describe a ladder of progress. The shrimp describes a web of surprises. The ladder is a story we tell ourselves. The web is what actually exists. The shrimp paradox is not a niche observation. It is a fundamental correction to how we measure evolutionary success. Complexity does not win by biomass. Complexity does not win by durability. Complexity wins only by the narrowest of metrics. Intelligence. And intelligence is expensive. A human brain consumes 20% of the body's energy. A shrimp's brain consumes less than 1%. The shrimp can afford to stop its metabolism. The human cannot. The shrimp can survive without a heartbeat for years. The human dies within minutes. The trade-off is stark. Intelligence requires constant energy flow. The complex nervous system must be fed every second. The simple nervous system can be switched off. The simple nervous system can wait. Here is the conclusion that textbooks resist. The shrimp did not fail to evolve complexity. It chose not to. The selective pressure toward larger brains was weaker than the selective pressure toward metabolic efficiency. The shrimp optimized for endurance. the human optimized for processing speed. Both are valid. Both are successful. But the shrimp is winning by biomass. In 2004, Patek's study measured the strike. The acceleration was 10,000 g. The impact force was equivalent to a bullet. The shrimp's own eye has a blind spot directly in front of the strike. It cannot watch its own attack. It does not need to. If you have ever doubted that nature operates by rules we have only begun to decode, the shrimp is your evidence. The simplest nervous system in the ocean produced plasma. It waited out mass extinctions. It outlasted dinosaurs. It outproduced whales. It does not acknowledge the narrative of progress. The 8th loop closes. The 9th opens. There are implications here that extend beyond biology. The shrimp demonstrates that survival does not require intelligence. It demonstrates that complexity is not the end point. It demonstrates that the most robust form of life may be the simplest. Engineers building autonomous vehicles study the mantis shrimp. They want feed-forward control. They want the system that fires before the obstacle appears. The shrimp has been solving this problem since before humans existed. The brine shrimp cyst is being studied by cryobiologists. They want to understand how cells survive desiccation. They want to apply the same principle to organ preservation. The shrimp has the answer. It synthesized it over millions of years of refusing to evolve. The shrimp paradox is not a footnote. It is a statement about the nature of life. Complexity is a strategy. Simplicity is also a strategy. The planet currently favors simplicity by total mass. The bias toward complexity in scientific literature is a bias of the observer. The observer is complex. The observer values its own trait. The shrimp does not care. The 10th loop closes. The final one remains open. When Thomas Say described Alpheus heterocheilus in 1818, he recorded the snap. He did not measure it. He did not understand the cavitation bubble. He did not know about the 4,700 degrees Celsius temperature. He simply wrote down what he saw. A shrimp that makes a sound. 2 centuries later, we have the measurements. We have the strike metrics. We have the fossil record. The shrimp has not changed. Our understanding has. The shrimp was always this extraordinary. We were the ones who were not ready to see it. The brine shrimp cyst remains in warehouses around the world. It waits for salt water. It waits for the conditions to return. It is patient. It has no alternative. The mantis shrimp rocks back on its legs. The claw cocks. The spring mechanism loads. The strike fires in less than a millisecond. The bubble collapses. The plasma glows. The water returns to normal temperature. The shrimp resets. The mechanism is ready again. The nervous system that made this possible is a collection of interconnected relay stations. It does not plan. It does not remember. It executes. It has been executing for 419 million years. The question the official narrative avoids is simple. If complexity is superior, why does the shrimp outlast everything? Why does the simplest nervous system produce the most extreme weapon? Why does the animal that cannot learn outcompete the animals that can? There is no answer in any textbook. The data exists. The papers have been published. The paradox has been named. The biology establishment continues to teach the latter. The shrimp has no opinion on the matter. It snaps its claw. It enters cryptobiosis. It waits. It has always waited. It will wait longer than us. The sound of its claw echoes through the water column. A cavitation bubble collapsing. A flash of light. Then silence. The shrimp resumes its patrol.